Welcome to the Big Cats Women's Program 30th Anniversary Podcast. I'm your host Simone Wern, and over the next few episodes we'll be celebrating 30 years of women's baseball at the Springvale Lions Baseball Club. Join us as we share the stories and the moments that have helped shape our program and make it what it is today. This week for episode 11, we're joined by the coaches, Mick and Benny, two of the men behind the women's program who have been our biggest supporters both on and off the field. So come along and celebrate what has been a great 30 years full of memories and laughs. Let's get into it. All right, we've been sitting here for a few minutes waiting for some technical issues to be resolved, but a big welcome, episode 11, and we've got with us this evening the coaches. It's Mick and Benny. Welcome, boys. How are we?
Good.
Very well, thanks.
Very well.
I'm quite intrigued. I've had quite a lot of feedback from various people and through various methods that I had to get you two in as
Surprising.
two of the
Very surprising.
two of the favourite coaches over the years, and to be honest, not just coaches but supporters of the women's program and the women in general. So I think it's great that you're here. Big thank you for giving up your time.
No worries.
Let's get into it. And before we start talking about anything, there is an issue that needs to be resolved, and I've been tasked with bringing this to you, Mick. Chevy wants the horse racing machine back. Can you make it happen?
I'm not sure. The horse racing machine might have gone to heaven, I think. So
Isn't that only because she
That
won
was-
it like 10 years in a row?
Yeah, she
Something
did. Yes.
silly like that.
that was
Yeah.
the prototype, as it turns
Bit
out.
bias
So
there.
if we could find time, I guess we could build a bigger and better one. But we'll see how we go.
She
Into the
needs it
future.
back. She misses it. It's a big part of her connection to the club, and you are right. She talked
Dominated.
to us about the fact that she used to just see this machine come out and go,
Pretty sure
I've-
Chevy bought a new car with all the wins. So no wonder she wants it back.
Chevy will work on that. Mick has not said no. So a new horse racing machine could be in the works. But we're not here to talk about horse racing necessarily. We're here to talk about you guys and really your coaching and your involvement in the program over many years. I mentioned off air that neither of you are big social media users. So there's not a lot of photos. I usually spend a couple of hours the day of the podcast trawling through photos.
It's a short and sharp podcast tonight.
It was really a 5-minute viewing, but I did find a couple, and this was cool because they're both obviously at Springvale. Unfortunately for you, Benny, the only photo I could find was with the best female hitter the club's ever produced.
Nice.
No, it's just me.
Yeah.
Pretending to hit there, but that's obviously you two coaching at Springy, and I'm excited to talk to you guys tonight about your experiences on the field, but really a connection to the women's program off the field as well, because I think that's just as significant and it needs to sort of be mentioned. We're going to kick it off with a bit from Mick about how did this happen, and when I say how did this happen, how did the women's program even become a thing? We're going to talk about the rise of the program and the success we've had over a long period of time, the stars, the impact the women's program's had on the club, the girls that you guys have spent a lot of time with. We'll look at a few photos. Limited Benny, you're lucky. And then we'll do our quiz at the end, and I'll see if you've got any memories that you can share with us. But we're going to go all the way back first. And Mick, you were saying before, there's only two people from a men's perspective that have been around for the full 30 years of the women's program, and it's you and Daryl Rosewell. What are your memories of when the women's program first started in 94, 95?
Yeah, it was a bit of a slow start. The women's competition was mooted, and they asked for team entries. We had a couple of girls in the club that had a bit of a desire to play women's baseball. I wasn't that keen about it at the time. We had 6 senior teams and 20 junior teams, and Daryl and myself and the rest of the committee were under the pump trying to run the club, and I thought another team was just going to make it difficult. But in the end, they were very persistent, and I conceded that if they found their own coach and looked after themselves, that they could go ahead and put a team in. I'm not sure they understood the gravity of what was involved, but they found their own coach. They got their team together, and they helped sort out the registrations, uniforms, everything else that went with it. Women are pretty good at that stuff. So, and I vividly remember their first training session. We were training under lights at Springvale Football Club, New Common Road. The old VFL footy club had lights, and they were allowing us to train there. And the men were training, and I said to the women if they wanted to have a training session, they were welcome. And I think there was 6 or 7 girls there. I had a look and thought it was might have been a bit of a mistake putting a team in, but anyway, we offered them the support that we could, but obviously we had limited time and whatever and resources to put into it. I'm not sure at the time anyone really thought it was necessarily a long-term thing, or that it was going to progress the way it has now. Obviously, looking back, it's easy to say, well, and I'm not sure too many of the people who are playing women's baseball now would understand what these girls went through to get on the field. So, but yeah, it was a little bit difficult. The girls, I think the very first game, I can't remember the score line, but it was something like 44-0. We had 9 hitters in the lineup. Only 6 of them got an at bat because we only had 2 at bats, and there was no 10-run rules, no mercy rules. The girls claimed they enjoyed it, but I can see that it probably wasn't as much fun as they thought it might have been. And but to their credit, they kind of stuck it out till Christmas time, when they came to us and said that they weren't necessarily going as well as they thought, and that the coach wasn't working out, and that they were going to pull their team out unless I found them a new coach and some new players. So I guess that I always knew it was probably going to come to that, but we did. We found a new coach and some new players, and after Christmas we were a lot more competitive, and that was the start of our women's team, and it's progressed from there into the future, I suppose. So.
Can I just, and this photo's great, if at home you can see this, obviously on the right, Gordon Gorilla, who hasn't been mentioned a lot, and he will come up, so we're getting Huffy in a few weeks, and she's going to talk a bit more about Gordon's impact, but he was a great supporter, and obviously Lynn, his partner.
Yeah, well, Gordon and Lynn were probably the major driving forces behind the team that wanted a team and took it upon themselves to do a lot of the work to get the team on the field.
Yeah,
so,
great.
Gordon was the scorer, and Lynn might have even pitched in that first game, or perhaps her daughter did, I can't remember. But yeah, they were the driving force.
I'm interested too to hear about, so when you went to Greg Morley and had a conversation, how did that happen? I've got a team here who's 0-8, and their average runs against per game's 45. Would you like to coach him? And they can't play much.
The record wasn't good. Look, Greg was fairly heavily involved in the administration of the club at the time, and I guess we felt a level of embarrassment that we had a women's team and they weren't very good. So I guess Greg, like myself, felt a bit embarrassed, and I think we were both coaching the men's team together at the time, and I just said to him, look, it's 8 weeks after Christmas. We need to do something and see if we can resurrect this. Let's give it a go. And strangely enough, Greg thoroughly enjoyed it, so that made it a lot easier. So we were able to get through the rest of the season together and get it done. And obviously, Greg stayed around for several more years and quite enjoyed coaching, and obviously coached then at a higher level as well when the girls got to a standard where they were competitive and playing in Division 1. He thoroughly enjoyed. So we got both sides of it. But yeah, it was a bit of a tough sell, but we got through. We did find some new players too for after Christmas, which made it a little bit easier because we could actually be mildly competitive. So.
We made the grand final.
We did.
The end.
Somehow. I think I'm not sure, but I think there was probably only 6 or 8 teams in that first year.
I think there was 6, in the...
So although we got beaten really badly early, when the couple of new girls that we got, yourself and Kathy Kemp and Helen, another softballer, could all play a little bit, and all of a sudden it turned around once we had a pitcher and a couple of girls who could hit. It made it a lot easier. So I think we went on to make the grand final. So.
Yeah, lost to Cat Rose Moorabbin team at the time.
That's right.
Graham John, obviously, I just want to mention Graham because I haven't talked about him yet, but he's up the top on the left there. So he was helping out because Rhonda is in the front row there, was playing, and 30 years later, Graham's involved in our Division 3 team, and he's been coaching with them for a couple of years. So shout out to Graham if you're watching. It's great to have you still involved in the program, and obviously his daughter Jazz is a big part of the thirds and has been for a number of years. So shout out to Graham and the John family. And I want to talk a little bit about the rise of the program. And so even though sort of Benny wasn't around at that sort of starting point, I think you were around the club to see the program grow.
Yes. Yep.
And despite those first, really, I think 4 or 5 years maybe. I mean, we didn't win our first premiership until the 10th year, our 10th year of existence. But the first sort of 4 or 5 years were really tough, and then we started to sort of, a couple of players came over. And, like, do you remember watching what's it like now? So we're 30 years in the future, but what was it like watching the program? Do you have any memories of sort of the girls getting better?
I only have memories of the girls being good. Really, I don't remember the early days.
You're lucky.
They're good memories.
I'll be honest. There was a lot of quality players, a lot of national players. So you had this bevy of girls that were just natural athletes, and Springy was very spoiled.
Yeah.
In the 2000s, when, as you say, you pick up a few players, and it was good to go watch, and you'd see some quality baseball, and I loved coming down on Saturdays and watching it early on. In my early 20s, I loved it. And then you go play Sunday, but you spend your whole weekend at the baseball club. Back then, I had a lot of fun doing that and doing it every week. Yeah.
And Albie talked about that when we had her in, that your whole week was sort of, you're at the club 2 or 3 times during the week, and then Saturday you're at the women's, and Sunday you go and have a beer and watch the men play, and it was vice versa, and that's just what we did.
Yeah. Slug, I used to go with Matty Hull and Richo. Bumster would come down double. We'd get a few of the boys pricey, so...
Yeah.
And we'd travel. We'd go to Doncaster, Port Melbourne.
That was very helpful, by the way.
Helpful?
Having a good support base at some of those opposition grounds.
We loved it. So we'd carpool, and you can't go wrong watching a bit of baseball and having a beer,
I do think Linda has a bone to pick with you, because she's still telling me, and I didn't necessarily remember this, but she said so this is the first premiership, and I'll throw to Mick in a second, but the next year when we didn't win, you were the coach and Linda was on that team, and apparently she'd played all season and you benched her in the grand final. Do you remember that?
Disciplinary action.
Gary Kickett. I don't remember that. No, I'll be honest, I don't. Sorry, Linda.
There you go, Linda. I got your apology.
She could have been the big difference. Spanger 9.
Well, and she talked about Spanger 9, and I think for her and Mandy it was a really interesting chat, because you talked about the bevy of sort of high quality players, but how much that kind of helped those other girls play better or come out, and they were sort of inspired by the people around them to play above maybe what their skill level was. Like, is that something that you...
Yeah, notice that. And obviously they just learn. They can learn from, players like you, Shay, Cal, Cat. But as you say, they probably played above their level, but you kind of need that to balance the team. It's I think it's a perfect mix what we had.
Yeah.
When I coached, I was pretty blessed. You guys pretty much ran yourselves, let's be honest. I was just there writing a lineup and throwing a few signals down, but you guys pretty much ran yourselves. So it was easy. I enjoyed it. No, it was... Sorry, Linda. I don't remember that, I'll be honest. I apologise.
Albie, your apologies there. You're welcome.
She doesn't hold a grudge, clearly. It's been, 18, 19 years?
Mick, obviously really great memories from this photo. This is the first premiership that we won 2004-5, and we'd made the grand final the year before. And we probably made it a year before... We thought we were going to make it, and we played against Port Melbourne, and we were really close to beating them, and we just didn't quite get over the line. But do you remember this time, like coming to the first victory and
I remember it, but they kind of all fade and blend into one when it's been so many grand finals in a row. That was, I don't know, the first of 20 or something. So it's kind of
21 in a row.
21. They kind of all blend into each other. I remember it well, but and I remember the group of girls, but it's hard for me to put a date on each one now because they kind of happen so often, and we had such a good group of girls, and this one was pretty easy to remember because I think Megumi was with us.
Yeah. So that was Megumi's first season.
Yeah, and she played with us for 2 years.
Yeah.
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 So Megumi wasn't the greatest baseballer, but she was pretty solid, and in the context of our team, she knew exactly what to do and how to do
consistent.
it. So, very consistent. So she was a great help to that team, and she was probably a bit of a role model for a lot of those girls. They learnt they had the skills, but they just didn't know how to play baseball, and Megumi had a good way. I perhaps didn't have the greatest way of telling them the right way to play, but Megumi was a bit of a levelling influence, so she was a good person to have around. But I remember it pretty well.
Do you remember, you may not, but the first 2 or 3 games we played, and we were winning by several runs, and she kept stealing, and you would call her in and say, look, when we're 10 runs up, we don't steal. And so the next game, she'd get on base, she'd steal again, and you'd call her, no, Megumi, do you understand English? I know you're struggling here, but you cannot. And Mick, in Japan, it's disrespectful. And you said, we're not in Japan, Megumi.
No, that was the problem. She played the way they played in Japan, and they believe it's more disrespectful not to steal than to lay down for a team than it is to actually steal when you're 10 runs up.
Yep.
And she couldn't comprehend how we didn't play it that way, and it took a couple of weeks before she realised what we were doing and why we were doing it, and that whether she liked it or not, that's how we played, and she had to toe the line. So I remember that pretty well. Yeah.
This photo isn't the greatest of qualities because it's so old, but I think, like, we've had this discussion in several of our chats, but this is probably one of the most famous victories that the women's program have had, and it wasn't Div 1, it was the Div 2 flag where you and Stu were coaching, and the Twos defeated Waverley, who at the time had won Division 2 about 17 times in a row, and no one thought we had a chance in hell of beating them. And in fact, it went extra innings, and Chevy ended up on the mound. Do you remember that game and that season?
Yeah, I remember it very well. The whole season we were relying on. We had a couple of the girls come back. I think it was the season after, perhaps the Springvale Berwick thing. There was a bit of a bit of tension in the club, and some of the girls decided to kick back and take it a bit easier. And we had a lot of good girls anyway, so it kind of worked out. Well, we had a couple of young girls, Rhiannon and Carly, play on the team, and they actually did the bulk of the work during the year, so it probably got us, into the finals and that. But I guess I always knew I had up my sleeve, Chevy and I think Jess Lee's, a couple of others. So we had a fair bit of depth that we could call on. I'm pretty sure it went extra innings, and Chevy threw in extra innings.
We blamed your team because we lost, and
you
blamed.
Got flogged.
Yeah. I know, because I'd had knee surgery. I couldn't play, just putting it out there. I was on, and I went after the first inning, I made 2 pitching changes. So Kat started, brought her out, brought Kate Soda in, brought her out, put Kat back in, and I think it was 12-0 or something.
Yeah, it was pretty
So
bad.
I was putting my shoes on, and I think my mother was in the crowd saying, you had knee surgery, you're not allowed to play. So I never came in, but we still blame you.
Divvy 2?
Yeah,
that
one
was Div 2, yeah.
Was Chevy doing Divvy 2?
Yeah, she played Div 2. So that was the year after the Springvale Berwick thing, and she wanted to...
She wanted to kick back and have a bit of fun.
And she wanted to play with Beto and Kel Wolf, and they were not going to get a game in at the time in the ones. So
we had
she
lots
said,
of depth as well, so just fit it together pretty well. We had a reasonable team, but, it fell away a little bit as well, so it was a pretty big victory.
Moving on to... Oops, I've gone past that. Moving on to the Stars. And you guys have had a front row seat, and I've pulled up a handful of them. But talk to me about the opportunity that you've had, and particularly you, Mick. So I want you both to comment. But like you've seen some of the best women's baseball players in the world playing at your club down at Springvale every week for the last 20, 25 years. Talk to me about some of those players and what it's been like for you to watch them over the years.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky. We've had obviously a host of quality imports as well as a host of our own players that have gone on to higher honours, play for the Australian team. I was lucky enough to go to a couple of World Cups as well, so got a pretty good comparison as to who could play and what they could do and how they could do it. So we were very lucky. We always had, just looking at the girls that are up there, we had pitching with Kat and yourself, Ella, who could all throw exceptionally well. So even if someone was having a bad day, I know with some of the other teams they relied on perhaps one pitcher, and if they were having a bad day, well, they weren't winning. Simple as that. We even had Kelmanji, who probably in any other team could have been a frontline starting pitcher, but didn't need to be. But she was super consistent, could play any position, do it well. She wasn't a standout star, and she didn't hit too many home runs or anything, but she was very, very competitive, got on base. Shay, obviously, well, she's the GOAT, so we're very lucky to have had Shay. I assume she's probably played in all those 21 grand finals.
She's the only player to have played in all 21.
She's a big reason that we've played in 21, but her, the way she developed over the years, and even from a young, I think I went to the 2004 World Cup, the first one, and she won the hitting tournament, the hitting title at the tournament.
Yeah.
So she was probably, I don't know, I won't go into ages, but she was only a young girl then. She was already a natural hitter, but she's continued to work on it and get better. And obviously Kate was one of the better hitters in the world. I'd seen her play at some World Cups, so we're very lucky to have her come and play with us. And look, we've had, since it's a few people up there, but we've had a stack of others as well that have, over the years,
I didn't have enough slides.
Oh, yeah, clearly not. Yeah. And a lot of other imports as well that could play and, helped us remain competitive. So, yeah, we've been very lucky that we've had a depth of quality over the years.
Yeah. Benny?
Yeah, no, just exactly what Mick said. As you say, having a front row seat in the 2000s and coaching. Used to love watching Chevy hit. You'd always knew something was going to happen.
Yeah.
Shay, where do you start there? She's, just turning plays and hits 500-600 every season. It was awesome to watch. Kel, left-handed, playing third base, sometimes middle infield, just turning plays that, natural right-handers couldn't do. It was great to watch. Ella, flicks the blonde hair and then just starts throwing darts. It was, it was great to watch. We were just spoiled for riches. We were. Very, very lucky. And as I said earlier, to coach them, I just wrote a lineup, but just to get to sit in the dugout with Annie and coach with Rob, I enjoyed my time with Rob, and get to watch those guys and Kat, yourself. Great fun.
Yeah, awesome. We did talk with Ella. One of our favourite Mick memories was his impersonations. And there was a few times where Mick would, after the game, particularly if we hadn't played that well, that he'd do the hair flick, the Ella hair flick. And do you remember those, Mick? Or?
Remember it well, yeah.
Yes.
I had a bit of a penchant for doing that sort of stuff, unfortunately. But
yes, you did.
Was born out of a light-hearted attitude.
Oh, absolutely. And this is really fresh. So this one's like a couple of weeks ago, but like watching from afar, Mick, and you know these girls pretty well. I mean, you coached Kay, so Kay's on the right. Kay was the manager for Team Japan.
I coached Kay, and she played in my men's team.
Yes,
as well.
yeah, they'll come up a bit later, but those 5 girls in particular, 5 of the best baseball people you'll meet, but people in general, just good humans. But how proud are you that they're Springy people?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty impressive, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure any other club could lay claim to that type of a photo, but I'm pretty proud that I've had something to do with all of them and know them quite well. And I'm not sure I've had too much influence on their career, although I did get to play with most of them in the men's competition. In fact,
You played with all of them.
Anna was our women's import one year. We didn't have a men's import, so we slotted her in as our men's import, and she caught most of the year in the first. So I was our pitcher and she was our catcher in the first. So, I did play with all of them in the men's, which was a privilege as well. But, yeah, great photo, that one.
I pulled up some photos that'll come up later, and in fact, both of you were playing men's with Shay, Rissa, and Kay. So that was 2010, the year that Kay and Rissa were out, Springvale Berwick. So you coached Springvale. I was coaching Springvale Berwick, and Kay was your import, Rissa was my import.
That's right.
And you guys were all playing in the men's together, which is pretty cool. And you were pitching.
No.
I should have pulled that photo out. And of course, just other Big Cats players who've gone on to be part of sort of really cool things. Obviously, Megumi, Mick's one of your favourites. She was the first import. We saw her in that first photo, but she's...
I don't like cheese.
She's basically your second daughter, probably the favourite daughter, I'd say, for you and Annie. She's come out several times since being our import. Still keeps in contact, and she'll be out again for the tournament. Arbe stayed with you. You've been lucky enough to have quite a few of the imports stay with you. And then obviously your amazing daughter, who's in a couple of these photos. And yeah, I think for, you probably won't say it, but it's pretty cool for you to sort of watch some of us go on and do some of the things we've done. But mostly in the background, knowing that you did have an influence. I think all the girls would say that.
Not necessarily a positive one.
Maybe. Maybe
no,
not.
I was very spoiled to have been able to be a part of it all, for sure.
And that's a good segue into the club impact, because, and I remember this sort of as the, and I must say I don't know if I've said this story on the podcast yet, but you got involved in the women's program to start with because you bribed me. And I don't know if you remember this story. It's very vivid to me. But I said, Mick, we need someone to coach the women's team. Will you come and do it? And you said, well, I'll help if you coach a T-ball team or something.
That's right.
And I was like, I don't want to do that. That's horrible. Anyway, I did it. Thank you, because I actually liked coaching. And you coached, and then you actually helped get Billy involved.
Well, I'm trying to work out what year that was, because you've asked me 23 times you've tried to bribe me to coach your team. So,
and vice versa.
No, look, I might have got Billy involved, but Billy got involved himself. He didn't need much pushing. It was late in his career.
No, he didn't.
And he loved it.
I pulled him up, and I pulled him up because, I've told the story a few weeks ago, Benny, that I don't think I was 18 yet, and I got Mick to drive me to Billy's house. He'd finally retired, and Elsie thought he was finally going to be at home with her, and Mick and I went to his house and said, we need your help. Will you help us? And Elsie gets on the phone and starts abusing me, because finally Bill's retired. He's no more baseball, no more work. Actually, he's coming 3 times a week to the club to help with the women's program. And he became a bit addicted, just because I think of the work ethic and the way the girls went about it. And I pulled up 2 of these photos. The one on the left is just a typical Bill stance at one of the games. But you and Bill are the only 2 people at the club that have a trophy named after them in our women's program. So obviously the Bill Ray trophy is the best and fairest, so the most coveted award. And then the Mick Wern hardest working player award. But talk me through, and I'd like to quiz you both on this, because you're both around the Billy Ray, Ernie Jones days, and it was a bit of a hard sell at first. So I know Ernie had nil interest in women playing.
Yeah, Bill had an interest, but his interest was based mostly around the fact that you were playing, and he could see that he had probably started almost out of obligation from that point of view. But of course it didn't take him long, and he realised the girls were, hang on, this is better than the men's. They're fair income. They keep training, they keep working, they keep they keep at it. It's amazing.
Then you have
And
to
he
turn
loved
the
that
lights
part
on.
of it.
Is it a sensor?
You
gotta
got to
get
go
up.
turn them on. Sorry.
Yeah, he loved it. He
Hold
he,
on.
he was fascinated by the work rate of the girls and they were like they wanted to learn, they wanted to get better, and he loved that part of it. So coming into retirement itself, I understand now what he's doing. He still had to do something with his time, and he
Yep.
loved baseball.
Yeah.
But yeah, his commitment was unbelievable. He would be there an hour and a half before training, setting things up, and if we didn't have something, he'd go home the next day and make us a new net or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So yeah, he's a huge part of it. Ernie probably wasn't quite so. He wasn't quite as interested and didn't see a future for it. Didn't want to really commit his time. But he came around eventually as well.
Yeah.
Perhaps part at Bill's insistence, and he thought if Bill's willing to get into it, then perhaps I need to at least accept it. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure Ern ever helped out too much, but he certainly accepted it and came to quite a few games and
Yeah.
got a bit more involved. So.
What are your memories of Bill?
I'll be honest, I don't have a lot. I just remember him always being there. He obviously couldn't stay away from the place. Just baseball fanatic, so massive asset for the girls to have Billy's knowledge, really, and
Yeah.
certainly helped. But yeah, I don't have any vivid memories, but I just remember him. He's just always there. You'd show up, and Bill was always there.
He did set me up a bit, Benny, because in his later years, Bill was a fairly fiery sort of a guy. He was my coach when I was a kid, and
That's
perhaps
where you
that's
got it
where I
from,
got
obviously.
some
Yeah,
of mine
yeah,
from.
there
But
you
he
go.
was
Yeah.
fairly fiery, and when we started coaching the girls, came to me and he said, I just can't do it. I can't yell at them, Mick. He said, we're going to have to play good cop, bad cop. He said, I'll be the good cop. I'll get all the praise and all the good stuff. But you have to yell
You
at
be
them
the
and
arsehole,
get
yeah.
into them. So that's
So
part
that's
of the
how all of it started.
that's part of the reason I've gone through a fair bit of shit in this podcast for the last 10
Oh,
weeks,
that makes
Benny,
sense, yeah,
because
yeah.
I was
Did say that,
obligated.
I
My
thought.
father-in-law made me yell at the girls.
So it was Bill's fault.
It was Bill's fault.
Right.
And he's not here to
Not here to
dispute
No,
that.
defend
he's
himself,
not.
yeah.
He's not. I must say it's been really lovely hearing, even from Linda and Mandy, talking about the things he instilled in them. Like he came with his printouts
Yes.
of how to work on tee swings and fielding mechanics and how to
Yes.
pitch and
Yeah, he was probably before his time. He didn't have the advantage of the internet and whatever. He would search books and magazines and get training drills and
On his
try and
typewriter.
adapt them. And he would type stuff out.
Yep.
And imagine now how easy it would be for him. Although I think he'd come up with some of those crazy drills now too that mightn't be quite as beneficial for the girls. But anyway, it's
a great influence and some
certainly, yeah.
great memories. Summer, we're talking about the impact on the club here, and so I wanted to talk about some of the people sort of behind the scenes, but also on the field, obviously, but the impact that the girls have had, because I was, back in the day, obviously you've been president of the club, I was president for 10 years, and the club was sort of in trouble for some of those years financially and lack of resources. We didn't have the volunteers. We sort of lost a few people. When Benny, you and I played under 12s on a Friday night together, and we had 6 teams, and
Yeah, massive.
we
yeah.
played T-ball together actually.
Yes.
Shout out to Jenny, T-ball coach.
Yes.
But there was a period sort of the years following that where the club sort of was struggling, and I think the women's program has had this great success on the field, but what a lot of people wouldn't know, Mick, is the contribution the women have made off the field to the club sort of going from strength to strength. And it may not be in a junior numbers perspective, but the club is in a very stable financial position. There's a lot of people around the club. There's a lot of great volunteers who give up their time. The girls are in the canteen doing a lot. We've got sort of 40 plus women's players. Tell me about sort of that journey and that evolution.
Yeah, well, I think clearly Daryl and I misjudged it from the outset when we were reluctant to have a women's team because we thought it was going to be a burden on us. But as the years pass, we realised that it's actually hugely beneficial, and we have a great situation where the women support the men and the men support the women. one of the reasons we are financially viable, have good grounds, and a strong committee is because we have probably a much bigger group to call on. I'm not sure we've had our ups and downs, I suppose, a little bit. You know, we went from a Division 1 powerhouse and won a couple of Division 2 flags, and now we're playing with one team in Division 4. But I've always been a firm believer you fit in where you fit in. Now, some people think that Springvale Baseball Club's essentially died, you know, only a couple of junior teams or whatever, but at the end of the day, we seem to win a couple of premierships every year, and the women have played in 21 premierships. Our masters have been hugely successful around the local competition and around the country. I don't have a problem. I don't question it all, but a huge part of that is the women, obviously, and I think there was a lot of other clubs started to realise when we were having a fair bit of success that it's beneficial to have a women's team and that you can work together to make the club better. So, and as Benny will attest, you know, on a Saturday sometimes there'll be 20 of the men down there. Even now we only have one team, but there'll still be 20 men down there watching the women's, and then on any given Sunday there'll be a dozen women down watching the men's. We managed to run the canteen for each other successfully, and we managed to help each other out with various other activities. So it makes for good social functions. There's a big group of people. So yeah, I don't think anybody could question the commitment of the women, and the contribution they've made to our success is immeasurable. Yeah.
Yep. Is it interesting for you in particular, watching now other clubs sort of, it's cool, we're going to get a women's team, knowing that we begrudgingly did it all those years ago? Like, is that interesting watching that now?
Well, a little bit, but I think now it's, they can see the benefits of having a women's team. In our day, there had been no women's competition. The baseball landscape was so busy with junior teams and men's teams and tournaments and state teams, and it just didn't seem like it was going to fit together. So nowadays, I can't believe any club wouldn't have a women's team, and it amazes me that some of our stronger Division 1 men's clubs who tout themselves as being big, powerful, strong clubs can't put a women's team on the field. And to me, that's amazing, because in this current environment, and I know our club continues to grow with women. I know we've had success and we have a great program and good coaching, but there seems to be a lot of people women who want to come and play baseball. So I can't see how any club wouldn't be able to see the benefits of it and try and put a team on the field.
And not even just the success; it was the off-field stuff. I felt like we were one of the first clubs where the men and women were really tight. As Mick said, you get a dozen girls down on the Sunday, and we'd always go on the Saturday. But everyone just knew everyone. Everyone was mates. It was just I felt like we were one of the first clubs that had a strong women's, strong men's, and just everyone got along. It was just it was a good tight-knit club. Yeah.
It's nearly gone full cycle, Benny. Now the women come and play in the Masters too.
They
used to laugh at me going to play
and
Masters. Now they're in there themselves.
Yeah. So the tight knit stuff's going to come up, and so is the Masters in a minute. But the other thing that's really cool, and you two more so probably than a lot of people, our women have made an impact in the men's program. And Shay's spoken really publicly about this, so I'm not speaking out of school here, Mick, but there was a year where she was still sort of in her prime, playing for the Emeralds, and she'd been over playing in Japan in the Pro League, and she came up and was playing Div 2 in the ones.
She was.
You were leading her off, and she was beside herself. She didn't feel like she was doing well. She mentally was really struggling with the game. She wasn't hitting, and why is Mick doing this to me? And it took her quite a while to figure out that actually she was getting a walk every game. She was hitting line drives every week, unfortunately 9 to 3, because they figured out her line drives were going pretty short.
Difficult for her, yeah.
But she also made every play in the infield. And I think that period in her career really helped her. It was a struggle at the time, but there's just a few of the girls here, but the girls have actually played a pretty significant role for the men as well.
Huge role, yeah. Especially in the later years when we started to struggle for any depth, to have a group of 30 girls and some of them fairly good players to call on was hugely beneficial for us. So, yeah, we were lucky enough to win I know we won it. I believe it was a Division 2 reserves grand final, and we had three of the
Yes,
girls
at St
playing.
Kilda.
Pretty sure Shay was at second
Shay
base,
Carroll.
Rissa was at shortstop, Taylor McKay.
Tay McKay.
played.
Yeah.
Mm. So that's a Division 2 reserves grand final. There's not too many of our men out there that can say they put their hand up and say they played in a Division 2, but to have three girls in the team and to win it well was fantastic.
Is that when Johnny Bell threw and nailed Benny Roosevelt?
Yes.
Was that game?
Yep. And we
Yeah.
had Hunter.
We had
So
Hunter
that's right.
Davis. Yeah, we had some pretty handy pitching, although we did lose the final to St Kilda the week before 18-3, and they were taking team photos. Yeah. Yeah, that year Shay played with us. It was a funny story. We played St Kilda at St Kilda, and Shay had been struggling a bit, but I told her the only way she was going to... She wanted to play to get better. I said, well, the only way you get better is if you go out and take it on. I could hit you in the 9-hole and you could hide away and be insignificant. What's the point? You play good defence. You're still competitive. And we played St Kilda, and they had a particularly good import pitching for them that year. He was very, very good. I think he went on to play at Blackburn or somewhere else in Division 1, but very good pitcher. And Shay led off, and she got a line drive to right centre. It was hard for her to hit because she'd make good contact, but of course they'd all feel shallow. She just didn't have the power. She got a really good hit, and anyway, after the game, the guy came over and he said, "Oh, it's amazing. You know, she's a very good player and whatever." Anyway, I saw him at the end of the year, and he was about to go back home, and I said to him, "Did you enjoy your time here?" He said, "I had a fabulous time in Australia." He said, "But there's only two things that happened that I'm going to be in trouble for." He said, fairly conservative family back home, and he said, "I went out New Year's Eve," and he said, "I had a few too many drinks, and I woke up in the gutter. The police locked me up overnight. They let me out at 6 o'clock in the morning." And he said, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to go and tell my dad that, but I'll get it done." But he said, "I can't possibly tell him that a girl got a hit off me. If he finds out that a girl got a hit off me, that'll be the end of my career." So I laughed at it, and he was deadly serious about it too. So
That's a great story.
That was a good story, yeah.
That's a great story. And I'm interested playing with the girls and good, like a lot of them good players. Most of them better than a lot of the blokes that were playing, to be honest, at the time. Did you guys cop stick from the opposition, or did you ever hear them talking about them, or did they sort of see them and go, "Oh, okay, they're legit, they're pretty good"?
I think initially there was,
early on,
when we first started, there was some comments about, what's going on here, what's this all about, but once they saw the girls, the majority of those girls play, they could see that they could handle. I remember we played in the winter there one year, and you had 5 or 6 or 7 of you girls playing with us, and the very first game we were playing Upway, and can't remember, I think it might have been Jade Huff playing third base, and one of their guys was a lower level player, was coaching third base, and he was trying to offer Jade some advice as to where she should stand and where she should play. Well, the first guy pulled the ball down the third baseline. She fielded it backhand and threw the guy out by 10 feet. And the guy said, "Oh, okay, I don't have to worry about it. You can play."
I'm not telling you anything.
I don't need to tell you anything.
I do remember that was a great season. It wasn't springy, but it was.
Nah,
it
but
was
it was
Shanners, Huffy, Toro, Shay, Kel, and myself. And we all
that's right.
played. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a great group.
Yeah, fantastic. Very cool. A couple of this is the two musketeers here, and this is what I love about the club. And we talked about that camaraderie and how we all get along. But one of my favourite memories was watching Bumpy and Shay play up the middle. This is before concrete shoes, Miles. This is
you used to be able to play a
few
bit.
years ago
People
now.
wouldn't realise that.
Shay playing second and Bumpy playing short, but this one's kind of cool because you grew up, Mick, and obviously, for those who aren't listening, miles and miles of Bumpy Road. Bumpy is his nickname, and Ernie Jones gave him that many, many years ago. This guy signs with the Orioles, goes over to the US, and years later is playing middle infield with a girl. And if you said that to him or to Ernie all those years before, someone or anyone would have probably laughed at you. But did you watch that and love it? Like, I don't know, there's players who you watch in your career and you just love watching them play. Like, I could watch Shay and Bumpy. They're two of my favourite hitters. If you said, who's your favourite guy who swings a bat, and who's, if you'd like
it's
to...
probably our best men's player that we've produced.
Yeah.
And clearly our best women's player. So
the two goats in one
I
photo.
enjoy watching it? I was lucky enough that I was playing third base. I had a front row seat. It was awesome. But,
Yeah.
you know, I think Bumpy had the same attitude to me. And he might have been right in his younger days. He mightn't have necessarily thought about it that way, but he played a lot of baseball with a lot of the girls, and his attitude was the same as mine. Well, we're not girls; they're just baseballers. We're playing baseball, and the fact they could hold their own, and sometimes almost embarrass us by doing things we couldn't do, made it really easy to accept. So I don't think there was ever a problem with that. He loved playing with whoever's playing baseball with him, and he just as jocular and just as funny and with whoever it was. So
if you didn't enjoy watching him play baseball, it was for the comedy value.
Oh yeah.
Too many laughs out in the middle.
Which was better.
Yeah.
It's sort of even, and the if anyone on the screen can see the facial expression of Miles, it's just a standard. But the two goats, I think you're right, Mick, the two springy goats in one photo. And then obviously you've seen the girls contribute and do a lot around the club. And then obviously the last couple of years, the Diamond Girls programs sort of come in, and we're in the community, and actually your very good-looking grandson's in that photo. He's not on social media a lot, so he's making
He's on more than me, apparently.
But talk me through sort of how cool that is to see the girls take a bit of ownership of some of the things they're doing at the club.
Oh, I think it's awesome. And once again, I think in some respects we're the envy of a lot of the other clubs, because we have a lot of things happening. We have a women's tournament that I don't get around the world too much anymore. It's one of the better, more recognised women's tournaments in the world. And it's run at our club by essentially a group of girls, which are from our club, which is, to me, is very impressive. Yeah, and the Diamond Girls and all the other things we do. Yeah, I think it's great because, and we've got some of those younger girls coming through now, taking the mantle and helping and driving the whole thing. So I think it's awesome. Yeah. And I can see a future. I don't say our girls are playing Masters now, so it might last forever, but I thought it'd last forever for me too, and it doesn't, believe me, so make the best of it while you can. But no, we've got a fantastic group of girls, and I think they make everybody want to jump in and help out and work together. So
yeah, bring everyone along for the ride. You mentioned Masters, and I had to bring it up, and we love. So this was our second year at the Ballarat Masters, and we won. We don't go to win. It's not necessarily about that. It was fun to win. But when I had to collect the trophy, I did say, I don't think you were there. I think you were playing maybe. But I did say that I grew up and my dad told me all these great stories about going to Ballarat for Masters, and suddenly here I am. And it is great fun. But has it been cool for you guys to have the girls there? Because, of course, you've coached most of these girls, or most of these girls.
It's fantastic. It's just another element of it. When I first started going to Ballarat, there used to be 4 teams. Now there's, I think this year, 44 teams or something.
42,
so, the whole thing's growing. But I guess the bit for me is that when I first started playing there and I resisted playing in Masters, people came to me and said, "Oh, Mick, come with our Masters team, come to Alice Springs, do this, do that." And I said, "Mate, I'm only 39 years old and I'm still playing in the first and I'm fair income. I'm not playing Masters. That's an old man's sport." And I guess it's one of the regrets is I missed out on 3 or 4 years I could have been playing in that. And at the time, I think probably you and some other people looked and said, "How stupid's this?" But I always knew that, well, it's there and it's fun. And I've been lucky enough I've probably played over 1,000 games of Masters, and I've been able to travel the world. There's so many opportunities, World Masters games and World Series Masters. There's all sorts of stuff. So, Masters is just another element. If you like playing baseball, why wouldn't you go and play Masters? So we're apt to have you up there, and you say you're not there to win, but everyone's always there to win. You're happy to win, as long as you go about it the right way. So
we do have certain rules until we get to the final, and then we're a bit more serious. But we've had a ball up there, and it's been great.
Well, to be honest, I think it's good. I think they have 8 women's teams this year. It's good for those other women's teams to see you girls up there playing, and this is what can happen. This is what you can do. So it's good.
And we're the flip side of you. So instead of putting off Masters, we've got girls, and it's 30 plus the women. So potentially that may be adjusted, but there's girls who are 31, 32. That's not me, Benny, obviously. Kat, Chevy and I and Huffy are bit older than that, but there's girls in their, early to mid-30s, and they want to play because they know it's just a great time and they want to hang out. And the cool thing for us is that there's 2 men's Big Cats teams and obviously us. So when we're playing, you guys, and I saw you guys would come down and have a beer, and then when you play, we would go and have a beer. And, Hoag's making his comments. Not this year, we missed your Hoag's, but making his
He's back
comments he probably shouldn't make, but he does buy you a drink, so I'm going to let it slide. But no, it's been great fun. And we've added masters to our bow. The girls.
Oh, look at that, Benny.
You've already talked about how close we all were and how we all became mates. And really, we spent a lot of time. We probably spent more time off the field together than we did on the field. Like, what are some of those memories mean to you outside of the whole baseball part of it, Benny?
Yeah, no, as I said, it was great fun.
That's Halloween at Scotty's
was
house.
That your brother's house? Yeah. So had a lot of functions, and we'd all go. Even on a Saturday night, we'd all go to the pub and
end up at over 28s or something.
028s and the Cove. The Cove got a bit of a run as well. So you enjoy that socialising with each other as much as as being at the baseball. So yeah, good memories. Drink responsibly, obviously.
It's a consistent message in our podcast.
Yeah,
to drink
should
responsibly.
be. So no, great fun. Yeah.
You need to go back to the episode with Albie and Mandy, because Albie had written a note in her phone of all the pubs we used to frequent.
Right.
So it's a big list.
Yeah.
And you were at most of them. So go back and have a watch of this. This one I stitched you up.
That's Movember.
This is Movember,
yeah.
And I posted this to try. I put your donation page up. I got you a lot of money this year.
Well played.
But I stitched you up, and I don't think you knew you were in the photo, or
no.
But obviously, Toro, Arbe, Momo, Shanners, Shay, and Half My Head. And that was at the club.
Calcutta, maybe.
Yep. That was at the club one night.
Yeah.
That might have been the night that Barkey threw the drink on Ferret. That nearly ended in a brawl. That could have been that night.
I think you're right, actually. Yeah.
Can't have been Cup Day. That's the first Tuesday in November, and you got a decent mogo on there, Benny.
Yeah, true.
Must have been later in November.
That's a good point. And here's another great one from the archives.
Oaks
and
Day.
so you and your partner in crime for a while was Camo, and you guys would come to the games, and Husey and Tooley for a few years, but this is you and obviously Jacko and Cal Wolf at the races.
Yep, Oaks Day. Yep.
Enjoying a few quiet waters as you did.
Camo fell into Flemington Road that day, I think.
Oh,
and me and a stranger scooped him up after too many waters. Yes.
Too many waters.
He just slipped.
I had to bring up Barkey for obvious reasons, because she was at our club for, if you look back in time, for such a short period, but she had such a big impact. And you in particular, you became good mates.
Yep.
And spent quite a bit of time with her. And obviously, Mick, you were part of the coaching staff for the Aussie Hearts and went away with Barkey. And you were there 2008 when she debuted for Australia at the World Cup in Japan. And so you saw her over there. But talk to me a little bit about Barkey and the time that Barkey was around the club, and what those memories mean for you, sitting here all these years later. And
yeah, well, she was obviously a good ball player, but also off the field just wanted to have fun, just loved having fun, bit of a juvenile, just a juvenile sense of humour.
Good segue.
right up my alley. Loved being around her. She was a ripper, and could play baseball pretty well too. Natural athlete, played football, played what was the women's NFL? What was that league?
Lingerie Football League.
That's it, yep.
LFL.
So she was a ripper.
Yeah, she was. Yeah. the photo there where we were in Hong Kong at a tournament, the Aussie Hearts, and at the end of the tournament, Benny, they had a big celebration dinner for all the teams and coaches at the hotel we were staying at. We all went up and talk about responsible drinking. They said we're going to have a sculling competition, so each team has to send someone up. So they said, "Come, Mick, you got to go up. You got to go up." So I went up on the stage and they give you a big mug of beer and
it was a giant
thing of beer, and it was 4 or 5 people up there, and I said, "Yeah, no worries." And they said, "Oh, ready, set, go." And I sculled down. I didn't win. There was half the beer over. It spilled over out of this big jug. Well, Barkey said, "That's not fair. That's not fair. We should have a player doing this. Come on, we need players up there." So she got up there, got the skull. Well, she won the sculling competition, no problem.
Oh, nice.
But then I found out she was actually only 17 at the time, so she was up there sculling beers and winning competition. But that kind of typified how she was and how she went about life. So
yeah, she was certainly
had
a
some
character.
good memories.
I remember that trip, and it was pretty awesome. This is her down in Melbourne as part of the Emeralds, running a bit of a clinic. I've got a few photos before we do our quiz, and obviously one of your favourites, Mickey, Megumi, came out as the first import. She stayed with you and Annie, but you tell us about some of the memories of obviously having the first women's import, but the impact Megumi's had on you and Annie, because she's now part of your family.
I don't know. When she came, she didn't speak much English. She was very reasonably reserved, but God, she learned English, and she was a good, fun person who loved life. She just I think she had a great influence on not just the women's players at the club. As I say, she wasn't the best player, but she just knew how to go about it. I guess she was destined to be a coach. That was a seconds grand final that we won at Ormond. With Sock and Vichikar.
Sockham
Megumi must have played shortstop for us, I think. I pitched the whole year and she played shortstop, and we played the whole season together. But she often refers to me as her Australian father. So good memories. She came back for 2 years. Probably her worst story was we were driving home from the club one night. She had a little Simone's little old Toyota Corolla.
Yes.
And I said, "Okay, it's okay, Megumi, I'll drive home." And I must have had a couple of beers, perhaps one or two too many. And I said, "Shift over, you'll be right. You know the way home. I'll drive home." Well, we took the back road down Greens Road, and we come up over the hill there on the East Link, and there's a booze bus. Well, I'm in strife here, Megumi. What am I going to do? So I took a hard right and down Audis Road, which is a little back street. And I just remember looking over to Megumi, and Megumi was in the driver's seat going, Anyway, I snuck around the back and we got home, but she never let me forget it. Every now and then she'd give me,
Oh, that's very funny.
You're getting locked up. So, no, she was
do not
still
promote
a good friend to this
that
day.
behaviour,
No.
but it's a good story.
Well, it was
It's alleged.
it was another era where it was perhaps a little bit more accepted. I would never do that now. And
You would have been fine, Michael.
yeah, I was probably okay
You were
actually, as it
okay,
turns out, but I just didn't want to have to go through the. But no, Megumi is fantastic.
Arbe stayed with you as well,
Arbe came and stayed
but I
with
think
us.
Arbe's contribution to the club over a period of time, and I think this is sort of before you were too committed with the Aces and you were still sort of watching quite a few games, but Arbe's contribution on the field and her development. So I think she didn't come over as one of the better imports when she
didn't.
arrived.
No, she was.
But she actually ended up being one of the best we've had.
Agreed, yeah. She wasn't an absolute frontline player when she got here, and I think some people question, well, why are you bringing her as your import? But once again, she had a pretty profound influence on a lot of the people at the club, and in the end, she was a very, very good player for us. So, yeah, just another one. She didn't stay with us for too long. She was there for a couple of months, and then she managed to share herself around a little bit to a couple of different places, and she was obviously very well accepted, and everybody was happy to have her, so it worked out fine. It must have been hard. Annie and I were a little bit older and tucked away a little bit at Berwick, so it was probably easier for her to get away. There was never any
And
issue.
she didn't speak a lot of English at first.
Didn't speak
either.
a great amount of English,
Benny.
but you know, she
Short straw.
On it.
She got by. Most of them get by. I don't speak much Japanese either, but we seem to be able to get by. So.
Yep. This is one of the very few times we ever got Scott to a game.
It might have been at Malvern.
It was at Malvern.
Yeah. Yeah, Scott wasn't a huge fan of the women's baseball. It really didn't.
When you say he wasn't a huge fan, he hated it.
Well, I'm not sure that he hated it. He wasn't a huge fan of it. He didn't embrace it. He came now and then, but just more to have a beer with the boys and to watch a game of women's baseball. He didn't have a lot of respect for it, and I understand why, because when he was growing up, baseball was real and women's baseball wasn't real. Simple as that. And
ouch.
It was just the way it was. And, my people said I yelled and screamed and ranted and raved and did dances and all sorts of things. My motivation was I'm competitive, I like to win, but it was more about teaching the girls to play real baseball. They had skills, but they didn't know how to play the game. They didn't know when to run, how to run, why to run, where to throw it. And the same girls would make the same mistake every single week. And that's the bit that got frustrating. And so I could see why Scott didn't ever consider it real baseball. If he came and watched it now to see the team we've got now, where they're better than our men. They know where to throw it, how to throw it, and how to move and what to do. And, it's a completely different game now. So in his defence, it would have been frustrating for a guy that could play at his level to watch the girls do the things they did and not understand why they couldn't do it. They had the skills, they're intelligent, but for some reason it took quite a while.
Yep. You went on to coach with the Vic team, and obviously some stuff with the Aussie Hearts. But was that also, so obviously you've just talked about playing baseball the right way and sort of taking the game to the next level and understanding the strategy and what to do in different situations. But was this sort of a fun time for you? So this was Tamworth.
It was a fun time because by that stage a lot of the better girls had worked out how to play and they knew exactly what to do and how to do it. So it was great to be able to help them and enjoy it. And I think Dom Rogerio coached those teams, and he was very, very good at instilling in them the right way to go about things. He's a very good coach in that respect. So it was a whole lot easier to go and be involved with those teams where all the girls could play than it was to be helping coach the women's thirds where it was just a little bit frustrating, that's all. So, but that was good fun times. I think I coached for 2 years and we won the title for 2 years.
Yep, so that was 2004 Tamworth, and then we won in Melbourne, and Magoomy played in the Melbourne.
That's right.
The Melbourne one, We've touched on this, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but we have spoken a little bit about that time where we sort of split. There was some things going on, and it was the right time to have a bit of a different approach, and we had quite a few good players, so we ended up talking with Berwick and we created a Springvale Berwick team. I already said I coached that team. You were coaching Springvale, Division 1. Can you tell me a little bit about your perspective of that time and what it was like, obviously being on the other side?
Oh, I wasn't on the other side. I always considered it as all to be won, essentially.
Except on game day.
Well, obviously when you're playing against each other, you've got to go out and play. But when we talked about the concept, I could see exactly what was going on and why we were doing it, and the motivation was fantastic. We were trying to spread the depth and spread the level of ability in women's baseball, and we had stacks of good players. It made sense. So clearly we had stacks of good players. We played each other in the grand final. So I was always very supportive and from not just from a coaching perspective, but from the club's perspective, I thought it was a fantastic initiative. I don't think we got the recognition for what we did from Baseball Victoria, from the rest of the women's competition, probably sadly from Berwick Baseball Club, which is disappointing. I thought it would have been a stepping stone for them to go forward, and they still languish and struggle to put a team together, unfortunately. And the motivation was to help them, to help the women's competition. It wasn't anything else other than that. And clearly you had a great team. So we had a pretty good team that year too. And I think the grand final came down to 1 run. So it was a great year. caused a few issues for some of the girls, but I guess that was always going to happen. But we got through that, and it really didn't affect anything in the long term. So we moved on from there, and just another premiership.
Yep, absolutely. Last photo. I couldn't find a photo with the gardening gloves on.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is a famous story where Annie won a grand final at Springy playing against Chelsea wearing her gardening gloves. But Annie did play, so it's sort of been, outside of Scott's disregard for the women's program, it's been a bit of a family affair. But do you, because Annie could play a bit back in the day, like, do you remember?
She was quite a solid. She didn't throw too good. She had a shoulder injury from when she was younger and wasn't able to throw. She's a very good hitter, though. Very good hitter.
I remember her hitting. She pinned shit a couple of times and always managed to get on base. She was very, very solid hitter,
Yeah.
I actually remember a game at Port Melbourne and Tarina Stokes was throwing a no-hitter and Annie got the only hit.
Yes.
It was a hit to 9.
Yes.
She broke up the no-hitter. But I thought I'd bring up Annie, and a shout-out to Annie. So Annie was team manager for the first premiership in 2004.
She spent a couple of years as the
and
team manager.
she did a lot of work with that team back in the day. So shout out to you, Annie. I don't think she knows how to work YouTube, so she'll never see this, but
excellent.
We've mentioned her. 30 and 5's our quiz, and I've changed this up a little bit because it's usually players, and this time I've changed it. If you could think of an on-field moment, this is going to be hard, Benny. I'm taking you back here, and you may not have one, but is there a favourite on-field memory from the women's program that comes to mind?
You better go first.
Oh,
Michael.
my favourite memory was that Division 2 grand final.
Yeah.
I don't think we clearly weren't expected to win. We were playing a team that was probably should have been playing in the Division 1 grand final, let alone Division 2, and we had a couple of lesser girls on that team who hadn't played much, who all stepped up on the day. But, to be able to, we had to fight and come from behind and then go extra innings, and so I think that was a pretty good memory,
Yeah.
Probably, I think, winning the flag with you guys at Altona. I remember got it done. I remember hugging Annie in the dugout and then you guys just jumping on each other on the mound. And so that's, I think winning the whole thing was pretty special,
That's a good memory to have.
Yeah.
Favourite off-field memory that you can think of?
Oh, I think there's too many, isn't there, Benny?
Yeah, there's a few. As you mentioned,
I was trying to think, were you there the day that we thought there could be a bit of fisticuffs at Doncaster? This was in the heat of the rivalry, and we'd recruited some of the guys to come and bring a video recorder.
I was coaching that day.
Yeah.
That's when we scored 10 or 11 in the first innings.
Yeah, we won 21-3 or something. And Husey and Hogues brought a video camera down, and Tooley bought a video camera, and they set it up, and we made a DVD of that.
Yes. I've still got mine somewhere.
Me
I don't know if
too.
you guys do.
Probably the only reason we avoided the fisticuffs is because we kicked their ass, so there was no reason.
You couldn't have scripted any better, as you said. They were massive. That was a massive rivalry with Doncaster. And they were always close games, but that day we just
something happened that day. I don't know what it was.
We just strung the hits together.
Yep.
It just all came together that day, and got it on camera.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mick. Oh, hang on, that's not your memory. I'm just throwing a story
it's
in.
a good memory though.
That's a pretty good one. The camera.
There's way too many off-field memories
of
things, hijinks we got up to, and things we did.
Yeah, we socialise that often. As you say, there's too many, and a lot of them are a blur.
One that stands out, Benny, is the day the Punters Club got the quaddy we were playing at Port Melbourne. Bumster was on the bet. He invested $20. The quaddy paid $16.
Bang.
That was a very good memory for me. I was trying to coach and listen into the 4 legs of the quaddy at the same time.
Baseball took a back seat, no doubt, for a short period there.
The girls have talked in a few sessions about how you've sort of gone through phases where you're like really angry Mick, really serious Mick, then you sort of calm down a bit, then you were listening to races in the dugout Mick, Then you went back to sort of angry Mick.
Oh, when did that happen?
So there's been
When
a
your
few
horse didn't win.
phases, but yeah. Who has been your favourite person in the dugout? So you've spent time in the dugout coaching the girls. Was there someone that was good value to talk rubbish with or to be around?
Your mum was good value. Your mum was always good value. But I think a player would probably have to be Kat.
Yeah.
Kat was hilarious and obviously a pitcher, so she'd if she wasn't in the field, she spent a bit of time in the dugout when she'd come out of pitching, and we just talk shit. She's got a
Still
similar
happening
sense
now.
of humour. Yeah, nothing's changed.
As he's the coach.
Similar vernacular. She's not backwards in coming forwards with her language, and I'm pretty similar too. Let's be honest. So we got along well. We used to have a good lot of shits and giggles. Yeah.
Awesome, Mick.
Yeah, my favourite would be probably Greg Morley. We coached together for quite a few years. We were coaching the men's at the same time, and we had a good rapport. We just we seemed to be able to have a consensus to make decisions, and a lot of them seemed to work. So it's great when you're coaching. I've coached an awful lot of teams by myself where it's difficult sometimes. You make decisions and you second guess yourself. But when you're in the dugout with somebody else and you're working together, you never seem to have to do that. You consult and you talk. And Greg was particularly good at that. He never really told me what to do, but he certainly helped me make decisions. So I think Greg was probably, certainly from a baseball perspective, there's lots of funny people in the dugout over the years, but
I'm
from
going
a
to ask
baseball
you that in a
perspective.
minute. I would love to chat with Greg at some point. I think his perspective, obviously he was around through those sort of struggling years and then into the premiership, so he'd be great to chat to. Who's and I quiz all the players. Who's the best player you've played with? And it's just so hard to come up with one answer. So you might have a couple, but who's the best player you've coached in the women's program? Is there one or maybe a couple?
Oh, for me, I think there was a lot. There was you, there was Shay, there was Chevy, Ella, Kat, Cal Manzi, all just quality players. Probably better players than me. So it was.
You're underselling yourself, Benny.
Well, it was just good to, as I said earlier, it's good to be a part of that group where you're just blessed with all this talent, and the team just ran itself. It was all I was there to do was argue with umpires and write a lineup. So it was. Shay's probably, as you said, the GOAT. Like she, just in her prime, flawless. Yeah, just awesome to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, I look at it a little bit of a different way, though. I mean, we had lots of great players, and if you're talking about the best player who played, Shay's obviously right up there. But if you're talking about the best player to coach, there's a lot of the lesser players that I enjoyed. Shay didn't need too much help; she could play. But I remember for a couple of years I coached the women's thirds, and Gabby Curves was there. Well, Gabby, no disrespect, Gabby was not the best baseballer we've ever had, but she was there every single week, 100% committed. She gave you absolutely 100%. So if you're talking about coaching people, she was a treasure to coach. I probably coached her for 5 years. I saw her get one base hit, but that she wasn't the best player, but she was a great person to coach because she gave you everything she had. And I'm pretty sure Shay gives you everything she got, but she's got a lot more ability. So we've had an awful lot of good players that would take forever to go through them all. But Shay stands out obviously as probably for Kelly Manzi was very good because of her
versatility.
But Shay longevity wise as well. She's still playing now and still playing at the highest level she wants to play at, and probably still the best player in the club and probably in the state. So amazing.
Yep. So you went a bit early.
Oh.
But and maybe you didn't, but is there a favourite player from across the years you've been involved? And
be careful, Benny.
Yeah, I'm going to be Switzerland here and say no. I don't think I've got a favourite because a lot of you are very different. You know, as you say, you've got your Shays, you got yourself, Cal, but you also loved being around Mandy, Linda, the girls that, you know, just try to get the best out of themselves, but just them as people. Like it was just the group that you know, having those girls with you know, with the girls that had the natural ability. They just loved being around you guys. Got the best out of themselves, but yeah, I can't pick a favourite player because it's
probably about 20 of them, to be honest.
Yeah, that's it. You
Chevy
can't.
was very good, and you know, she's just made it really easy because she never questioned anything you did. She never. You know, she just wanted to learn. She wanted to play well. She was pretty competitive, which I liked, but she wasn't nasty, and she just stayed level-headed.
I think I felt we had a no dickhead policy in the women's. There was you could get along with all of them.
Pretty much, yeah.
We were pretty lucky as a club. There wasn't too much, you know, there wasn't too many people where you go, oh, he's a bit of a flog, but and you know, just as I say, being around the girls,
not like the men's program.
But, I felt very lucky to be around all you girls.
Yeah.
Just there's so there was a lot of versatility, but you know, they were just great girls. Yeah.
Funniest of the girls, and you might have already answered this, Benny, but the funniest person at the club in your time. Mick, do you want to go first?
Oh, there's been several of them. Kat's pretty funny at times, and Linda was obviously pretty funny at times, but there was lots of people that were funny for different reasons, and I guess I was in the dugout so much that I just heard a lot of things I shouldn't have heard, and it was one of the things that was hard for me. Is a lot of discussion about makeup and lingerie and various things that really didn't.
Christ, I didn't hear any of that shit.
So I found a lot of that pretty funny. That I was just thinking, to God, where do I go with this? So, but there was lots of funny people, and at times, you know, in certain situations, it was just good. There was funny things that happened in the game that I probably yelled at the girls for, but when I look back, they were pretty funny. So. Lots of funny people.
Yeah, Kat. You'd have to go Kat. Shay's pretty funny once she gets a couple of drinks in there.
She's after
hilarious.
the game funny, though.
Yeah.
During the game, she's a bit serious.
I think she's learned a few tricks from Bumster when they played men's too.
Yep.
So
He's passed the baton, that's for sure.
Well and truly.
Yeah. Good answers. Now, this question is named after you, Mick, and I think you're a little up in arms about it.
I'm not necessarily up in arms about it, but I refute a little bit of it. I think it's been taken a little bit too far. And I think there was a couple of occasions when I may have got out a bit of circus music, and I'm pretty sure my mate Greg might have come out with the comment, throw a tent over it a couple of times too. So, and I want to clarify this by saying I look back and said perhaps I was a bit harsh on the girls and whatever, but I went to a women's game 2 weeks ago, and it reminded me of where the circus music came from. So there was a play with a girl on first base and a girl on second base with one out. I think Mandy was up to bat. She popped it up to the first baseman. Well, the umpire was quite a competent umpire, called it an infield fly. First baseman ran around in 3 circles, didn't catch it anyway, and it landed beside her. So the 2 runners took off.
Oh, no.
So the girl at first base then starts to panic. Where do I go with the ball? So she goes over and touches first base. And they go, no, you need to tag her over there, throw it there. So then eventually, in the meantime, the 2 runners are going halfway and they're stopping. Should I go? Shouldn't I go? Eventually they decide, well, I'm going to have to run. So the first baseman throws to the third base. The runner goes to third. And the third baseman catches the ball, thinks it's still a force, so she tags the bag. I'm so excited I got an out. So, and whoever was coaching third base said, no, you're not out. Well, the runner just runs straight past third base all the way to the fence. So then the third baseman proceeds to chase her down the line, chasing her down the left field fence, trying to tag her out. So the circus music didn't come from someone making a mistake. It came from making 23 mistakes in a row. No one knew what was happening. They were just running around in circles. And I'm thinking, Yeah, I think I'm vindicated with that circus music because that was circus stuff. Believe me. Very entertaining it was.
That sounds excellent.
You had to be there.
I've been there on many occasions.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think of all the moments of all time where you threw a 10 over it, was it the day that I rolled the ball to Hannah? Is that up there?
That was kind of up there. That wasn't too bad. I could see the merit in that, but geez, poor old Trevor Chappell's spent his whole life in hiding for rolling an underarm, and you got away with it. No, there was hundreds of them. I don't know. There was lots of instances. It wasn't anything in particular. It was just generally that the girls didn't seem to grasp it. They I don't know how many times the same person would run on a pop-up on a floor. Well, how does that happen? I tell them once, I tell them twice, I tell them 3 times, they're still doing it. It was a circus, so as simple as that. And then people would tell me I was creating a circus, making the girls run laps while EJ Tobias had to catch 100 fly balls with a pudding bit above her head.
Oh, the pudding bit.
Oh, that memory has come up.
Yeah.
And it was Indian file.
It was Indian file, it was, and you had to sprint
the whole
around them and
field.
keep going. I said, no, she's only at 32, keep going.
Shit.
I don't think EJ ever dropped another
She didn't.
pop-up after that. She realised, if you use 2 hands and take it above your eyes, you have a chance.
She didn't.
So, anyway.
Hey, I want to set the record straight.
Uh-oh.
So you came in here and said you want a right of reply, and I think you've had it.
I have, yeah.
Kelly Wolfe.
Kelly, yeah.
There's been a consistent theme that across the podcasts that you used to target Kelly Wolfe in the after game speech. And she used to hide. So each week she'd try and hide either next to you or like in the shade if there was sun out. Or she'd like pretend she was taking her cleats off and then like stand behind someone. And the girls used to try and like shadow her. Do you remember actively seeking her out?
Well, I just figured I was smarter than her. I knew what she was up to, but no, I didn't. I'm not sure I actively sought her out. She did cop a little bit, understandably so. And the reason Kelly copped a bit is because she was actually a very, very gifted athlete. She had a strong arm. She could run. She swung a good bat. But she just refused to put it into practice or to learn. And it was frustrating because she could have been the best player on the team.
Yeah.
But she didn't seem to be able to grasp it, and it frustrated me. I never yelled at Shay because Shay just got it done, and she did it right. And then I didn't yell at some others because they did it right. But I've yelled at lots of them. I've yelled at lots of the good players. There's people in our club who I did tell a lot of them to go and play soccer.
You told most of us to go and play soccer, me included.
Geez, you don't need to throw, but our base running was just atrocious. It's such a simple part of the game and such a big part of the game because it make a big difference in a tight game. And we were just, some of our girls were pretty terrible at base running, you'd have to admit. And it frustrated me. So, I may have targeted a few of them on occasion. I want to clear the air and say I never deliberately targeted Kelly. She may have come in for a couple of sprays here and there, but my motivation was sound.
Yes,
but
no,
yeah,
I think she knew that.
No one could hide from me. Don't worry about that.
No, we know.
Yeah,
we know.
Something was to be said, it was to be said, and the men will attest to that too. I was far worse with the men than I was with the women. So, and it was just the way I was brought up.
Pewee can attest to that.
Your old mate Billy was my coach, and that's where I learned it. So, anyway.
Thanks, Bill. Two things I wanted to mention before we finish. Two of probably my most vivid of your coaching memories were a day at Malvern where you called Huffy the worst base runner in Victoria, actually Australia.
Yeah, she was, yeah.
And she's never forgotten it. So every time, and she's not great.
Not great. It's horrid.
But I'll never forget it, and she's never forgotten it. And then another time where you told Mandy that she had the biggest custard arm.
Wow. Someone doesn't want to agree with me. What's going on?
I'm not saying anything.
Two of my favourites. I actually have...
I coached the women's team last week. Mandy was on the mound, and she threw a complete game winner. So it's not... You don't have to be able to throw hard
Custard
to get
arm
the
works.
results. It works. as long as
Natural
you throw
knuckleball.
straight.
She's got a natural knuckleball.
So it just,
Yeah.
yeah. No, Mandy's safe to say she doesn't have a strong arm, no.
No. One of my favourite memories, looking back, at the time it wasn't, but we played Footscray, I'm going to say circa 2005, 2006, and I had pitched, I struck out 10, I went 4 for 4, and I think you used to avoid ever giving me praise because you didn't want to give your daughter, you're like, you can't do that.
Did he
And
still
I
found
understand
something
that.
to give you a spray?
No, I
about?
expected you to strike out 10 and get 40, so go on.
So I was in the team talking. I was like, he's gonna tell me I did good today. I'm waiting for it. And you know what you said to me? Everyone, we had a good win. Good job. Simone, go and run 10 poles. You walk someone. So I had to
I
go
don't think
and
it wasn't a
run
walk. It
10
was
poles. I walked one person.
No, it wasn't. I know what the
It
10
was one
poles was
walk.
for. It wasn't a walk.
What was it for?
It was because you had 2 strikes on a hitter and you threw a pitch down the middle and gave up a base hit. And it's a standard rule in baseball. If you've got 2 strikes on a hitter, you don't throw them something they can hit. So your 10 strikeouts wasn't worth a pinch of shit because you gave up a hit with 2 strikes on a hitter. You need to get better. There you go.
I became a better player in spite of him, Ben. That's what happened.
Didn't work for too many others.
It did help me. The girls have all talked glowingly about both of you. Hence you're here because they requested you.
They wanted Billy, but they couldn't find him. So then, so.
We've got a function coming up on Friday the 31st of Jan, and then a 50-year one on Sunday the 2nd, which they'll both be great, but I'm hoping you're both going to be there on the Friday night at our favourite place, the Waltzing. Before we finish, is there anything else you guys want to say to finish us off?
No, I don't think so.
I'd just, like to say in closing how proud we are.
Yeah,
I'm not talking on my personal behalf, but I'm part of it, I suppose. But the club, we were lucky enough to squeak that first team on the field 30 years ago, and it was line ball, believe me, but we're pretty glad that we did that. It's certainly been beneficial for the club and for women's baseball, and it's great to see women out there playing baseball. I mean, I think in some respects we started the trend towards women's sport. There was no women's football in those days. There wasn't very little women's cricket, but we had women's baseball, and it was kind of a forerunner to women saying, well, hang on a minute, we can do this too. So I think from that point of view, I don't know how many girls we've had play through the club, but it's been great to give them the opportunity to come play. So.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Big thank you for giving up your time. It was great to chat, and I'll see you on the 31st.
I'll try my hardest to be there. As you know, I have a lot of commitments.
You'll be there.
Okay.